So this week, I'm going to be talking about boats. By the end of this episode, hopefully you'll know a little bit more about the kind of vessel that it takes to run an oyster farm. An oyster boat is actually the backbone of your operation. From planting seed to transporting harvested oysters, each operation requires a reliable vessel that can carry some good capacity. Let's take a closer look at some of the unique challenges that an oyster farm runs into on a daily basis and how the right boat can make all the difference. Some of the key points what the boat needs to be able to navigate shallow and sometimes muddy waters. Some of the ways to mitigate that is always, every time, flush your engine. That just means putting fresh water to the engine. Stability is also crucial for carrying the heavy loads of the oysters and the equipment and the people. And also different tasks will require different functions for boats. So having a boat that kind of has interchangeable pieces, almost like a transformer boat, that's also a benefit. Choosing the right boat from the beginning is crucial to efficiency. We actually started with a Carolina skiff, 24 foot. Some of the issues that we ran into after using it for years were actually when the boat would start sinking. You have a bilge pump, but that bilge pump is often filled by sand or mud, and then eventually the motor on it dies. And then the next thing you run into, your boat is always taking on water. That can be really stressful and pretty unsafe. With our first boat that we used with the Carolina skiff, we had a electric motor, electric winch, and this thing was the cream of the crop. You pressed a button, oysters came up. The only problem was we had to put an extra battery on the boat, and we also had wires that had to run along the side of the boat and really to the crane. Now it worked great for years, but after working with such sharp cages, the crane started to electrocute us when we pressed the button, which was a huge safety issue and also very unpleasant. You'd press it and you'd feel it in your fillings. I have a filling and I could feel it back there. Would actually take an oyster out of a cage and press the button with the oyster, so the oyster got the electricity. But that was just one thing, and how we mitigated that was actually just, see that right there? There's no electronics to that except for the DeWalt drill that's easily replaceable for $100. So obviously safety is a huge factor when it comes to picking out your first boat for oyster farming. But some of the other things that you got to think about are costs. This is a business. So just putting $50,000, $100,000 into a boat, into a business that you don't even know if the river is going to grow the oysters yet, is a little bit too risky for me. So Facebook Marketplace, used boats, used pontoon boats, used pontoon kits. To be in the oyster farming industry, you're gonna have to be crafty and you're gonna have to be able to build stuff. If you have trouble with building a bench or building this thing, we built it back here, not saying I could build that, and I didn't think I could, and I didn't, we had somebody help, but like, you will, if you wanna find success in this, you will be building a lot of your own stuff. Some of the benefits of that are how to fix everything when it breaks. That was one problem with the crane, so not only was it expensive and it electrocuting us, the thing was also impossible to get fixed. Great company was out of the Northeast, and for them to fix the motor, the winch motor, was gonna be months, and they wanted it back, and 1 week down without that thing, it's worth buying a new one. A month, 2 months, and it's essentially useless. You need a whole new crane. Your business will not survive if you're waiting 2 months on something as important as a winch. To have an oyster farm, you actually do not need a winch. For us, since we use bottom cages, which are a 3 foot by 4 foot cage, I'll show you one right here. It's a big oyster cage actually, hold about 800. There's different styles. We'll get to that in a later video, but the kind of gear we're using is a pretty heavy beast when it's filled up. I'd say they're 200 to 300 pounds. So as I said, we started with a flat bottom skiff. Flat bottom skiffs are typically a workhorse of oyster farms. You'll see a lot of them in the southeast, Florida, really to Virginia. Over on the west coast and up in Canada, you see actually these massive barges. And that's what this little boat was modeled after. I could not afford to get a massive metal barge. So I looked at it and I was like, hey, I think I can make a miniature version of that for inexpensive. So I'll give you a rundown of our boat. I got the first one I ever built right behind me, Scuttle Me Sue. I love that boat. I love the design of the boat actually. I'm not bullshitting. I got the boat tattooed right here. So I do love this boat. And that just shows how important your boat This is my first boat. We call her Scuttle Me Sue. This is a Thurn 2000 Commander crane. It was a good crane. I'll show you later what we've done on the boat. Just very simple wood. We bought the pontoons used and got to have our life preservers. We've got all of our safety, obviously, that's here. But we compare these boats to, they're just on water forklifts, and that's essentially what they are. In this business, it's just a big logistical game, moving rocks around. Now, so coming up onto our second boat, this is Scuttle Me 2. This is a 28-foot version. Everything essentially stayed the same. Gas, electric, boat box with the safety and the flotation devices. And then we've got this. This is the second upgrade, or the second. So we got a smaller crane. And this thing is light, man. One person can actually lift this thing out, and it lifts the same amount of oysters. So we got that 2000 on there for no reason. And it's heavy, and it weighs the boat down. Some other differences we made in this one, instead of using 2x6s, I used 2x8s. I had made a mistake and accidentally ordered them. And then when I put them down, it really stabilized the boat with weight. So we actually went with it, and we added that onto the third boat. Oyster farming is not without its challenges. From maintaining these boats in harsh saltwater conditions, which I'll recommend Zincs for, and also navigating unpredictable weather and creating a boat that has the durability to get banged up. You're never gonna have a clean oyster boat, I guarantee that. I actually traveled to Ireland this year with one of my buddies and had the opportunity to get a tour of a wonderful farm in Ireland called Oyster Oyster Company. Wonderful people, and we had the honor of going on a tour with them and checking out their operation. It was intertidal, and the way that they harvested was with tractors. I was actually talking to him, and he had been farming for, I believe, more than a decade, and they had never had an oyster boat. They just used tractors. So that's just an example of oyster farming is different, basically, per river that you're in. And the best way that you're going to get better at this is by spending more time on the river and the environment and understanding what challenges are going to be in your way. And then building the most durable, thrifty piece of equipment that's reliable to make sure you can get the job done. Maintaining your boat. Running fresh water through it, flushing that engine, too much. But I do understand aluminum. You can protect aluminum with Zincs. Also, if I had to choose between buying used and new pontoons, actually just the pontoon part, I probably would go with new, because the saltwater environment is slowly going to eat through that aluminum, and buying a pontoon kit or a used pontoon that was on the coast is not a good idea. You can get them that were on lakes and rivers, but what you'll find is if you look under the boat, the structure is not going to be extremely strong. It's usually going to be thinner. I actually had a buddy start a farm, and he wanted to get in without building his boat really quickly, so he found a good deal for $5,000. He found a 24-foot pontoon. Now when you jumped on one side of it, when we got it, it would like, but it had a flat open space. It was $5,000, and the engine ran. So what we did is he took some 2x8s, laid them across, and now that thing is sturdy. And for $5,000, he got a working boat. And that's 10,000 oysters. That's a good deal. Everybody's situation is different, but I would not skip out on an engine. I mean, financing a $10,000 engine at like 6%, which it used to be, was like $200 a month. But I wouldn't finance the whole boat. And this is not financial advice, this is just what I did. Wouldn't finance the whole boat, build that part, but finance the engine, because unless you know how to build a brand new engine. Rubber rat. You got bad river karma from this weekend, boy. What the hell did you do this weekend?
Too much PUBG.
I downloaded Magic the Gathering.
Ooh,
that's right. Come on! Alright, and this is boat number 3, the 3 little scuttlers. That's the engine that I bought, the 90 horsepower that was on Scuttle Me Sue. We got it all reworked, and she's good to go. We have now added this to the back, out of the way. We've gotten everything where we want it. ultimately to provide all that space. This right here is the zincs. Now, with pontoon boats, you put one here, but the little trick is, and we learned this the hard way, you see these welds, they lose their efficiency as it tries to pass through this weld. You'll actually notice pitting there. So what we'll do is we'll actually attach zincs to multiple places on the boat, so that really anywhere that you see one of these, that zinc loses its efficiency. Now, the front of the boat's gotten a little prettier. We've got just a standard, really simply just those. We got 4 of them on this one. We might put 2 more for 6. We stuck with the 2x8 because it was thick and it added weight. You can see this is a 4x4 aluminum square of 1/2 inch aluminum, and that's kind of what our base plate is. And then the small crane, we ended up sticking with the smaller crane because it's nicer and cheaper. But this bad boy right here will do about 20 cages at a time. One of these boats with 2 people can harvest anywhere from 70 to 100 bags a day with this setup, and that's pretty easy. I mean, so the first episode is about new boats. What's the most important thing to a boat for an oyster farmer?
For us, the crane, right? I'd say the crane, bottom cages. We wouldn't be able to get much done bottom cage wise without that. New engine.
Perfect. You just built an oyster farming boat. Actually, the one in the front yard. What would you say is the most important part of an oyster farming boat?
Functionality and organization.
So Creighton went with the Facebook Marketplace boat. Any regrets? What do you say about that?
0 regrets. I thought it was a pretty good investment. Definitely needed to make some upgrades to it, but she's functional, she's stable, which is key for an oyster boat. Stability. Skiff or pontoon? Pontoon, 100%.
So, it's been 6 months since we put a video online. The original idea was to track the growth of growing 5 million oysters and getting them to market. Well, the markets have slowed, and it's kind of a boring concept to watch. Just plant, harvest, humble, sort. Recently did another YouTube video on another channel on upflip, and it stirred up a lot of interest in people that actually want to start farms. And that's actually why I wanted to start this channel, to give out more information to people about how to start farms. So it kind of hit me that what we're going to do is every week we'll have a new subject on oyster farming, and we will go into kind of the information about that particular subject that we've got. Now, if we don't cover something on the particular subject that you want, just leave it in the comments. Also, if you've got questions pertaining to any other part of farming, please leave that in the comments. My email address is crystalcoastoysters@gmail.com, and if you just put YouTube question in the headline and put it there, I'm going to work on getting a hold of those. One of the things that I thought I would also bring up is all the interest in oyster farming. I think we made a video that we put out online that made it look a little bit too easy. It ain't as easy as it looks, but it is a lot of fun. If you aren't afraid of hard work, you like to build things, you're crafty and a problem solver, this is probably a pretty good job for you, and you will get satisfaction. Economics, you might make money, you might not, which I guess is not great for some people, but I guess you also have to have a bit of a risk-taking mentality in this business, and so if that's something up your alley. If you really like the idea of supporting the environment and helping grow the sustainable protein, and those other being outside building stuff, heavy lifting, construction, all that stuff isn't for you, you might be better suited in the distribution arm, which is also another industry that needs to grow to support the infrastructure, to support the market and the demand of oysters. Now, I understand that the demand is not quite there yet, but I think it's coming. I think it's good protein, and I think it's easy to grow, and I think we have scientists that can make it taste like whatever we want. And we've got really good chefs too. So there is a way to help the oyster farming industry and being oyster adjacent and not having to be a farmer. And I would encourage everybody, I wish everybody could be an oyster farmer, but it's not for everybody. And I figure some people it's not for. And take that as a challenge and become an oyster farmer if you really want to, and use that as motivation. All right, it's cold as hell. I appreciate the support. I'll be back next week. I think next week I'm gonna talk about gear types. I don't know, or seed, I don't know. I'm gonna think about it over the weekend, but there will be another video. These are gonna be quick filled with information. I'll try and get better with the editing, but mostly I think it's important that I get the information out there without making it too much of a visual. I'm just not good at editing. I am actually probably hiring an editor. If anybody's interested, or if you know somebody that does video editing for YouTube and wouldn't mind editing 1 or 2 videos a week for me, send them my way. Email. Thank you guys.